Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. And it looks like we do have more speakers that are at the podium here at that Florida GOP summit. Going to lift up the audio and listen in.
Here talking to Floridians and standing between you and lunch. We'll get to Scott Pressler in a minute. We'll get to that. I got to start by saying Alligator Alcatraz. Congratulations, Florida. We got to get one of those up in Philadelphia real soon. I'm working on that. Look, I want to take a couple minutes, and I want to start by saying thank you to Evan and the team, but more importantly, thank you to all of you. Most people don't know this, but the playbook that we used to win Pennsylvania, a large part of that came from Florida. And I mean that. And that's why the team wanted me to come and kind of tell that story. Obviously, you guys can brag. Florida's been a great win for us the last couple cycles. But Pennsylvania, being the largest swing state, us taking the playbook of Florida to use that to win. I want to walk you through how that happened. So in 2016, I was working for Rand Paul when he was running for Senate. So as many people know, Rand was running for president. Your former governor, Jeb Bush, I'm sure we got a lot of Jeb fans here. Jeb was running, and then Trump gets in, and all of a sudden everybody's poll numbers seem to follow Trump coming down the escalator. Not his, but everybody else. So I worked on Rand's Senate reelection because that same year he had to run for reelect to get back into the Senate. So he drops out of the presidential, we go back and we help him out. And there was something that we learned on that campaign, and that was even though Democrats are down 10 points, we rely heavily on all the volunteers and all the TV and all the radio and all the ads. They have these paid community organizers, the Soros-funded on the left. These are full-time people. This is groundwork. The left does not play games. They just continue. This is a full-time gig for them. And in 2016, I kind of watched this. Rand still won the state. It's a great night. President Trump was elected for the first time. But we learned that we need to start doing what the left is doing. So I started this battle to go out and say, hey, why don't we pay individuals, and why don't we put these ground teams out there pounding on doors and trying to get our people elected? And in 2018, a few people were interested. But 2020, something very special happened. The coronavirus. You guys familiar with that? I know it didn't really hit Florida, but for the rest of the country, it was a pretty big deal. And what did COVID produce in terms of political realities? One, we realized that Ron DeSantis was the best governor in America in 2020. And two, everyone started saying, hold on, who certifies the elections? It's actually the state legislators. These legislatures are in charge of certifying it during the whole legal battle. And so COVID really produced those new rules for voting in a lot of the states, and it made people realize that we can't just focus on these big federal races. We also have to get involved at the state level. And so that's what we learned from that. The problem in Pennsylvania is when they changed the rules in 2020, they allowed for 50 days of mail-in voting. Not election day, not election weekend, not election week, not election month. We have election season in Pennsylvania. 50 days. And everybody in this room, except maybe a few, would have agreed with Trump, as I did, which was to say in 2020, no, vote on election day. It's the most secure way to vote. We all said that. We didn't chase any ballots. We didn't go door to door. We encouraged everybody to vote on that one single day, while the Democrats had 50 days to vote. That's like me having a sales competition and saying to you, hey, you're going to have 50 days to make sales, but your colleague's going to have one day. And that's like us saying, it better be a very good day. It's tough. It's going to be very difficult to win. 2021, we said, you know what? We got crushed in 2020 with the mail stuff. Let's see if the courts will fix it. No way. 2022 in Pennsylvania, guess what? We actually lost the state house. So everybody said that the legislators would fix it. No way. 2023, we got punched in the mouth. We got beat so bad by mail-in ballots in 2023 that we all looked in the mirror and said, what are we going to do? And when I say bad, think about this. Republicans, since they changed the rules, I'm not counting 2024, we'll get to that good news, Republicans have averaged 20% versus the Democrat 80% when you look at the mail-in voting, actual votes that come in for each candidate. You're going into the election down 20 to 80. Now, let me say this before I get the naysayers in the room. I hate mail-in ballots. Now, the New York Times gave me a bunch of crap for this because I announced that while I was the mail-in ballot guy for Trump in the largest swing state. Trump's PA mail-in ballot guy says, quote, I hate mail-in ballots. I do. I'm not an advocate for them. I want a single day, heck, paper ballots, hand count, no machines, count me in. And I need to get that out there so you hear it. But those are not the rules. And the reason that Florida was our playbook is it was one of the only states where Republicans had adapted to understand how do we use this to our advantage? How do we get people to vote by mail, to vote early, and to make sure we compete and not have to fully rely on Election Day? Now understand this, the people that we targeted in Pennsylvania, they were not Election Day voters that we were trying to get to vote by mail. That doesn't change any of your totals. The objective is to take those that are Trump supporters, Republican supporters, and make them voters. These are low propensity. Everybody in this room knows that term. People that are unlikely to vote. How do you get them that are unlikely to vote because you know if they vote, they're going to vote for our team? See, the Democrats understood this. In Pennsylvania in 2020, there's roughly 1 million Democrats and 1 million Republicans that were not going to vote. They're registered. We have registration by party, but all of the data would tell you they're not likely to vote. And what did the Democrats do? They didn't waste their time on Election Day voters. They went to every one of those low propensity voters, or could be voters, with a request form. And they said, hey, Bob, fill this out. We'll get a ballot sent to you. Out of all of those low propensity, 7 out of 10 that requested a ballot voted. You want to know how Joe Biden allegedly had 2 million mail-in votes in Pennsylvania in 2020? They went to every single person that never votes, that is registered Democrat. Whether they did it legally or not, we can have coffee and discuss. But they made sure every one of those people got a ballot to their door. And then 7 out of every 10 sent it back. That was their playbook. And so we looked here in Florida. And you might say, well, how did I get started doing this? You know, what kind of got us in this situation? Well, in 2023, I get a phone call. Anybody here know Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA? He's pretty well known in our circles. So Charlie's team reaches out and says, hey, listen, Turning Point is going to do Arizona and Wisconsin. And I'm talking about states where the rules have changed to allow for chasing or harvesting ballots. Okay, I'm not talking registration. Anybody here know Scott Pressler, registration guru? So everyone says, oh, you were in PA on the ground. Like, did you run into Scott Pressler? Yeah, how do you think we chased all the votes? He had to register them all so that we could chase them. So Charlie calls and says, look, he says, we're doing Arizona, we're doing Wisconsin, but I have a little bit of a problem. And that is that MAGA world and Trump world have Pennsylvania as the #1 target for a flip for the swing states. 19 electoral college votes, 96.1% chance that whoever won Pennsylvania would win the White House. And he says, I got to go back to the team at Mar-a-Lago. You know, I'm talking to Turning Point folks. They're like, we got to have a plan where we have Pennsylvania covered. And he said, look, you've been screaming about this since 2016 when it comes to knocking doors. He says, you talked about Florida a lot, you know, being down there, analyzing what they're doing. You've got a group, Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania, that's already set up. You're from Philadelphia. My right-hand man is from Kutztown, PA. And so they're like, this is perfect. Charlie's like, I don't want to raise money for this. I got my own 2 states to worry about. So I said, Charlie, I need your written endorsement. I need Trump's endorsement. I need help raising the $3 million to go out and knock 500,000 doors by hiring 120 full-time people. He said, yes, yes, and good luck. I got my own money to raise. Thanks, Charlie. So we launched this program. We called it the PA Chase, and it was simple. 10 Airbnbs across Pennsylvania, 124 full-time people, and our goal was to knock 500,000 doors. Now, here's where I broke the rules. And you guys should push every politician, every organization, heck, even the state party, push them on this. Ask for a measurable objective. Not just going out and knocking 500,000 doors. That's action. It's good action. It's patriotic. We appreciate the people that did that. But what is actually going to measure success? Don't just say, oh, Trump winning the state. Well, that's easy. So what we did is we went out and we said, Trump got 20% of the mail-in versus Biden. If we could get him to 33% of the mail-in versus Harris, he can't lose. Not he'd win, he cannot lose. We knew 30% we'd still likely win, but 33% versus Harris, we knew we couldn't lose. And so I broke the rules and I went out there and went public with that. Now, why was that bad? Because every political consultant came to me and said the same thing. Cliff, if you don't hit that 33%, it could be real bad for you. Meaning, you know, it'd be embarrassing, right? Nobody would want to work with me. They wouldn't want us to do our door programs. And I just kind of said, look, but what if we do hit it? What if we do hit it? That is an honest number. I'd rather be honest and give an objective that everybody can follow. Everybody can see the results of what ballots came in by mail, how many here, how many there. Were we at 33%? So we were on the ground for 2.5 months. Like I said, 10 Airbnbs. We knocked 510,000 doors against Kamala Harris and for Donald Trump. I'm happy to report to you guys here today, Donald Trump got 34.5% of the mail-in votes and won Pennsylvania. Now, my one joke for the day is I could not believe how much hate we got from MSNBC and CNN. And people think, oh, of course you would. But no, it's different. I'm a door-knocking guy, right? I'm not the guy out there who's, you know, pontificating or debating. And for them to just try to destroy some of our door knockers, these kids are patriots that are out there going door to door. The lies. My Twitter account was on CNN, Erin Burnett. What the heck's her show, Primetime or whatever, for like 10 minutes, just going after us because we had found a house with 42 Democrat addresses, and the woman that answered the door said nobody lived here. And they were calling us fraudsters, and this, it's like, what are you talking about? What we said was honest and true, and guess what? You know, come to find out, there were some issues at that address, but it gave them their talking point. So my one joke is, a mentor of mine said this once. You know, they say if you want a friend in politics to get a dog. Well, 2024 really taught me that there is a new definition to politics. And a lot of people think, you know, it's for the good of the country or it's public policy or creating rules. But the truth is poly, from the Greek meaning many, and ticks, which are blood-sucking creatures like the Democrats. That's what I learned this past year. All right, I want to end with a pledge to you guys. And once again, I want to thank Evan, the whole team. I want to say, Florida, you guys just keep doubling down on what you're doing. We took your playbook. We understood how to get people to understand and to educate them about voting by mail, about voting early. And it really paid off in PA. Next year, we've got a governor's race in Pennsylvania. It's going to be very difficult. But the one thing we learned also from Florida is that you cannot take time off. And so what we're doing now, talking to Vance's people, talking to other people within the party, we're not taking a year off. Okay, this PA Chase program, we're working from 2028 backwards. And so what I'll announce here today is in 2028, we're going to knock 1 million doors. In 2027, we're going to do the 500,000 again. In 2026, we're going to do 750,000 doors. But even this year, we have over 10,000 elections on the ballot in Pennsylvania this November. And the reason it's important that we keep this going is we want permanent infrastructure. Florida taught us that you cannot let off the gas. And so what we're doing this year is we're focused. We've got 3 different retention races. We've got 2 statewide judicial races. And like I said, thousands of school board, county races across Pennsylvania. But let me just end with, these were our 2 options. One, you take the year off while Soros and the Democrats have 100 people full-time round the clock. You give up all the gains from 2024. And then you come back in 2026, you're behind the 8 ball, you're like, all right, let's go. We're going to figure this out. We'll make up the difference. I don't want to do that anymore. As Republicans, as conservatives, we need to be done with that. Match the Democrats, fight fire with fire, and beat them at their own game. That has to be our mantra moving forward. And my pledge to you today is that I am going to work my ass off to make Pennsylvania the next Florida. You guys gave us the playbook. Thank you so much.
All right, so you're listening right there to the Florida Freedom Forum Summit that is underway with Republicans there over in Orlando, Florida. We have been dipping in and out as there are some high-profile speakers expected to be there, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. That's expected to happen during the 1 p.m. Eastern Time hour.